Kathryn Shear, so she's with us from Datassential. She's going to be doing a nice presentation with us on global, global culinary, and a lot of emphasis on Italian and some other things that will go around that, but also talking about the difference in what consumers are looking for today. So it's a really great presentation. Look forward to that. She's one of the manager. What is your title exactly? Because I've seen it two different ways.
Manager on the Pro Solutions team at Datassential.
Yeah, so that's cool. And then we got Jenna Armstrong, who's technical sales manager. I love that. More so, you can see what she's wearing, the chef. She's with MARS Foodservices US, but and you can see the logo all around, which is the Ben's Original, which I've actually gotten used to the name now. It took me a minute, right, to not say the other term.
Yeah, it takes a little while. I just kind of usually use just Ben's as my fallback now.
I'm going to take us through some of our tools at our Datassential, a bunch of syndicated data, as well as some data that we have from our webinars and our keynotes as well. So I wanted to go in and first talk about the state of the menu. So we've noticed that over the pandemic that menus have shrunk a lot over that 1 year. So some of the things that we're noticing as restaurants start to open up as usual, open up their dining rooms as well as their outdoor space, is that there are other factors in this as well, such as labor cost and inflation. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is inflation. So over the last 12 months, we've noticed that the total US inflation equaled 7%. And in that same time, we've also seen menu prices rise by 5.7% as well. So we wanted to look at just a little bit more of what was happening in that menu inflation by segment as well. So you'll notice that limited service, both QSR and fast casual, had the biggest amount of inflation when we're looking at menu items overall. And then for full service, it's still a larger bump at mid-scale as well as casual, but fine dining really took a huge impact during the pandemic, and you'll notice that in further slides as well. So we're not seeing as much inflation when we're looking at fine dining. So like I mentioned, we are looking at historical data when we're talking about our menu trends portion of this. And while we were collecting the data from 2020 to 2021, we noticed that menus shrunk by 10.2%. And that's a huge amount of shrinkage when you're thinking about data. So we wanted to break that down even more with the average items per menu. And we can look at that by segment in our menu trends database as well. So you'll notice when we look at the COVID impact in the last year, all of those segments declined in the number of menu options that they had. And you'll notice that we also have the 4-year growth as well. So in the overall 4 years, there was starting to be an increase in those menu items, and COVID really took a dive when we looked at that menu segment overall. And if we look at the menu share, we can see that there was a lot of impact when we look at adult beverages. Overall, that was the largest shrinkage of the menu, as well as appetizers. So when we look at the other menu parts, we see that entrees, sides, and non-alcoholic beverage actually had a little bit of an increase. And it makes sense as well when we're thinking about in dining at restaurants versus delivery. Those are things that just don't travel well. You're not going to think about a cocktail to go you're not really going to think about appetizers as well, but where your focus is going to be is on entrees and sides, as well as non-alcoholic beverage. And then desserts kind of just plateaued. It stayed the same as it was before. And we even noticed that some things like really easy grab and go desserts like cookies, bars, and brownies still stayed the same at that time. And I also wanted to touch on our keynote information as well when we're thinking about scratch versus pre-made. So a lot of our operators that we took research from, we looked at the operators who switched from making everything from scratch to a pre-made product, and 23% of operators are buying more pre-made products since the beginning of COVID. And we also started to dig into those operators, and it said that just 8% of those operators are doing scratch prep. So it's very rare for a restaurant to only be making scratch. Most of it is coming from prep or pre-made. And then we also noticed that 82% have not changed their level of culinary experience. I think this is telling that while we're switching to things that are easier to be delivered, as well as back to that more in a restaurant point of view, that they're sticking with what they already know is working right now. And then when we look at things like scratch versus prep, operators are still motivated by food safety when thinking about prep overall. And other things we noticed were cutting down on time and other things that would affect overall prep for their chefs. So I wanted to start to dig into some trends that we still saw were growing on menus. And you'll notice as we go through the menu trends portion of this, that there are declining numbers. I just want to caveat that with just because things are starting to decline on menus, this is looking at a historical look, not trying to focus too much on like innovation and all of that, because there still is room for innovation overall on menus. So when we look at global trends, I thought this was really interesting. I pulled this from our Global Foods keynote, and it says 49% of consumers say they find flavors exciting when they eat global infused foods. So really making things authentic, trying to make things a little more different, really gets consumers excited about going out and eating new food. And I also wanted to throw in our menu adoption cycle. So our menu adoption cycle is based on 4 different stages from inception. This is where those trends start. Adoption, it's starting to get a little more well-known. Proliferation is where it switches from excitement to volume. And then ubiquity, you can find it almost anywhere. So things like Italian, you'll see is in ubiquity. And just because it's in ubiquity doesn't mean that innovation has to stop. This means that there is an opportunity to start blending with those earlier stage trends. So we see a lot of things like a Sicilian in adoption, as well as regional Italian, more focused in that proliferation stage. And when we think about Italian cuisine, it is America's favorite cuisine. 82% of consumers like or love it. However, we're starting to see the taste change just a little bit. So when we think about Italian, boomers and Gen Xers, it's still their most loved cuisine, followed by Chinese and Mexican cuisine. However, when we're looking at those younger consumers, it seems that those are really starting to switch. So millennials and Gen Z love Mexican cuisine more than any other cuisine type. And that's still followed by the same as boomers and Gen Xers. Millennials still love Italian food, but Gen Z loves it almost 9% than millennials overall. And if we look at that breakdown just a little bit more, you'll notice that boomers love Italian food more than other cuisine types. But when we look at the other generations like Gen X and millennials, it's kind of evenly distributed. Millennials are a little more skewed towards Italian cuisine than Gen Xers. But overall, Gen Z is really focused on Latin and Mexican cuisine overall. So I wanted to start to dig into some of those global trends that we have in menu trends as well, and taking out that and looking at some trending rice dishes. And you'll notice that I popped in cauliflower rice up here. Always that healthy halo that is growing a lot on menus overall. We see it boosted by 680% in the last 4 years, and it still has a relatively low menu penetration. But we noticed that those trends like keto and paleo aren't going anywhere right now. They just continue to grow on menus. And then we also see a lot of global influence in here as well. So a lot of Indian inspired dishes as well as Japanese and Korean. So you see things like kimchi fried rice, Japanese rice up here. And then all the way at the bottom, we have arancini as well, which I really did take a deep dive when thinking about arancini for this presentation. And you'll see that currently it has a lower menu penetration, about 2.1%, but it's grown about 21% in the last 4 years. So as we start to dig deeper into Italian, I wanted to pop out that menu adoption cycle once again. And I know our focus was on risotto, so I wanted to pop that out right in the proliferation stage here. And then you're also going to see some earlier stage trends like arancini in adoption. And we also see some other classic staples further in the menu adoption cycle. When we think about Italian, I think it is pretty telling that all of those top Italian dishes are centered around either pasta or pizza. We see all of those items towards the top, but they've kind of plateaued in the last 1 and 4 years. And we see a lot of that growth starting to decline on menus. And this could be an impact from COVID, but it's also telling that it is both in the 1 and 4 year growth column. And then when we look at Italian dishes, I think this is room for innovation. This is where you want to start finding that sweet spot. So we see a lot of regional trends like cacio e pepe at the top of the fastest growing. And this is where I like to start bringing in my point of view of this, not using it just in the traditional application, but also applying it to other forms of Italian cuisine or even other global cuisines as well. Like I always think of Whole Foods cacio e pepe farro, making it just a little more health focused than usual. And we also look at the top Italian sauces and flavors. So you'll see all of those traditional flavors all the way at the top: garlic, butter, red sauce, things that you expect. But at the bottom, we're starting to see those more indulgent regional flavors, like anchovy is all the way at the bottom, as well as truffles, which are growing just slightly over the last 1 and 4 years and still have a pretty high menu penetration overall. And if we look at trending Italian sauces and flavors, we see even more of that regional aspect. So Calabrian chili peppers are growing the fastest among those Italian flavors, kind of balancing those spicy trends as well. So something that's a little spicy but not overpowering to an Italian dish. And then you also have things like aioli that are growing among the fastest. So we have truffle, garlic and pesto aioli growing. And then we have a lot of indulgent, heavy flavors in here as well, like lobster cream and Parmesan sauce.
Hey, Kat, I don't want to interrupt, but
Sure.
it's kind of interesting to me because, the menu penetration is so much more important in a lot of these categories, in my opinion, than the 1 year and 4 year growth. And I think, the 4 year growth probably has a little more, realistic, meaning to me than the 1 year growth because of our time for the last couple of years. Can you speak to that a little bit so that while we're looking at this, because I look at menu penetration and it means a lot more than maybe necessarily where we would look at the trend of that.
Absolutely. So at Datassential, the 4 year growth is what we really base our trends off of, because we don't want to look at just those fads overall. And if you look at that 1 year growth, especially with the COVID impact, it could really start to affect what you put on the menu overall. But when you look at the 4 year growth, it's where you can start to ideate and start to mix all of those flavors in together. So I definitely think that menu penetration as well as 4 year growth are two of the most important features when you think about menu trends. That's a good point, though. And then we can start to talk about like Italian cheeses. So among the top, we also see those highly used Italian cheeses overall, like Parmesan and mozzarella, but they are declining as well. But I wanted to pay more attention on the trending side. So we saw that Parmesan overall was declining, but on this, we're seeing a lot of varieties like Parmigiano Reggiano starting to grow over the last 4 years. So I think this is just an application of authenticity. When consumers are going out, they want to know exactly what that ingredient is. And having those specific varieties just make it more powerful to the menu presence overall. And the only portion of this for Italian proteins that I saw was the top. Unfortunately, a lot of those Italian proteins were declining over the last 4 years. But when we start to look at this, we see a lot of those tops are traditional applications like meatballs, as well as some more Italian American applications like pepperoni, salami, and a lot of charcuterie types of proteins on the menu with high menu presence as well. And then we also see some premium proteins as well, like veal on here, as well as seafood, anchovies, clams, taking up the majority of the share of this top list. So I wanted to do a deep dive, and I know I'm getting close to time, but I can go through this a little quicker. So when we think about risotto, over the past 10 years, it's increased. So we see that long-term trend line at the top, and you'll see that currently risotto is on 8% of US menus. But over the last 4 and 1 year, it has taken a bit of a dip in menu presence overall. And that could be because of the huge impact of COVID. It's not something that's easily delivered. So a lot of operators started to take it off of the menu. I also thought it was interesting when we think about risotto that a lot of it is centered around fine dining, and that has a huge impact. And when we're looking at menu trends, we saw that fine dining took the hardest hit in the last year with the number of items that they had, revenue, labor costs, all of that was really affected. And that is where risotto is mostly located currently on menu offerings. And it also is focused usually on independents. And when we look at the regions as well, we see that it has a focus mostly in the Northeast, but a high presence in the other regions of the US. And then just some room for ideation. When we think about risotto, we see a lot of those classic pairings on menu trends as well. So mushrooms with all the way at the bottom, we have wild mushrooms that have grown just slightly. And then we have some premium proteins like shrimp, lobster in here, and salmon. And then we also have some bright and earthy flavors like lemon and truffle among the highest paired with risotto.
Hey, Kat, just to like chime in for a minute,
Sure.
that slide prior to that, I mean, a lot of that like decline in risotto is certainly labor oriented, right? And the fact that they weren't open, it didn't deliver, but also like just trying to, you know, all restaurants today. I mean, day to day, week to week, you know, you never know what's walking in the door. So it was an item that, you know, again, and I think you're going to hear more as we go on in this presentation, you know, that Janet's going to talk more about a solution for that. I mean, people want risotto, but it's the operator's going, it's just a problematic thing to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can showcase in our flavor portion of this, the consumer sentiment around risotto. Consumers still love it. It's just something that is a high prep product, and it takes a lot of skill to make it, honestly. Not anyone can make risotto. And then the last portion of the risotto trends that I pulled from Menu Trends is looking at the trending paired with risotto. So again, we see a lot of those premium proteins at the top. So halibut, braised short ribs, very indulgent flavors up top. And then we have a lot of region-specific Italian ingredients like Parmigiano Reggiano, very specific types of rice with risotto as well. And then we have that new fine dining aspect to this, like English peas getting mixed in, or marsala, that are starting to grow on presence with risotto. And I also wanted to just throw in some of the recent LTO activity of risotto coming from our scores database. So this is based off of 6 key metrics in our scores database. And you'll notice that when we look at the most recent risotto LTOs, that it does have lower purchase intent when we're looking at these LTOs. But when we look at the uniqueness of them, they're extremely high, especially the types of proteins that are paired with this and the type of overall experience that you get with risotto. And we categorize this all based on our composite score. So you'll see that all of these are specialty appeal. So it's really tailored for a certain type of consumer database. And when we like to start to think about ideating, we have our 4 buckets of this. Usually you want to play in that superstar item, but specialty appeal is equally important, especially when you're trying to tailor it to an experience overall. And then the last portion that I'm going to go through is our consumer affinity. So this is pulled in from our flavor database, and we can look at consumer affinity for specific dishes, cuisine types, and overall what's on menus and retail. So when we looked at most loved Italian foods, we saw that pizza was at the top, but I didn't want to knock that risotto is at the bottom as well. 40% of consumers love risotto. And I also wanted to break out who loves risotto. So when we look at this chart, we see that Asian consumers are more likely to have an affinity for risotto, as well as consumers in the West and the Northeast, which we already kind of saw in that Menu Trends database information, where you saw that it had a higher presence in the Northeast overall. And then when we look at the other generations, you can see that millennials have a higher affinity for risotto, but Gen Xers and boomers have a really high affinity compared to those other generations. So I wanted to pull out millennials overall and their affinity towards specific Italian dishes. So we created an index where we looked at millennials versus the total US, And we saw that arancini was actually all the way at the top for this, as well as some more region-specific Italian foods like cacio e pepe is in here, gnudi, as well as some more unique types of pasta as well. And then when we look at Gen Z, because we saw that huge gap in that chart that only 25% of Gen Z consumers like or love risotto. So I wanted to pull this out to showcase how Gen Z thinks about Italian food. And you can see that it's very unique types of cuisine. So they love gnudi, they love padillas, which are those handheld pizzas, as well as more Italian American cuisines, or things that can be kind of more Instagrammable overall. I think mostly to impress their friends overall. But that's what we started to see when we started to look at our flavor database. And you'll also see that arancini is over-indexing with Gen Z as well. In the last portion of this, I just wanted to throw a shout out to one of my favorite arancini restaurants here in Chicago, Cefa. And this is their classic wild mushroom arancini with a truffle aioli. I highly recommend going to it if you're ever in Chicago. And that's all I have.
That looks really yummy to me.
I'm getting hungry. So thanks for having me today. As Kevin already introduced me, my name is Jenna Armstrong. I work with MARS Food in North America. I'm the Senior Technical Sales and Culinary Manager, but I wear kind of a lot of hats. One of my favorite things is that I get to bring our products to life with our customers, and I am sort of taking care of innovation for our food service portfolio under the Ben's Original brand. So today I have a new product that's actually not out yet. It just got produced for the first time last week and is in transit to distribution. So I actually only have like sticker pouches. I don't even have real product yet because they couldn't get it to me in time. But I hope that you guys enjoy kind of learning about it, because it's something different than what is available in the market today. And I think it's something that addresses a lot of the tensions in the food service industry right now around, you know, labor for sure, skill, shrinking menus, which means shrinking pantries, and all of those sorts of trends. So what it is, it's called Ready Rice for Risotto. And what it is 100% Italian grown Arborio rice that's fully cooked inside of a pouch. And what it is not is a fully cooked risotto. So this is just the rice mixed with water, a little bit of oil, and a little bit of salt, and designed to be like that base starter for risotto so you can make it what you want. And I am going to show you 3 different ways to use it today. So one of them is going to be like a really classic mushroom risotto. I'm going to make a little bit of lamb chops to top it. Then I'm going to make an arancini, and then even a dessert, which I'll talk a bit more about in a moment. So 3-step prep in risotto in 5 minutes is the key takeaways from this. So I just put a tablespoon of butter in a stock pot. I'm putting in about a 1/4 cup of shallots. And because I'm going to make a mushroom one, if you wanted to make like a base plain one, you wouldn't have to add the mushrooms, but I'm going to make a mushroom one. I just got like a trio of like clamshell and some brown and white trumpet mushrooms from the store. They're beautiful. And I'm going to just sweat those shallots in my butter for about 2 minutes. And while I'm doing that, I'm turning on my pan and back. We're going to see if I can cook front and back at the same time without burning anything or starting a fire on camera. This is just lamb rib chops that I have just seasoned with salt and pepper. I'll finish them at the end with some butter and pepper. Sear right there while you guys are sweating. One of the things that I think was brought up in Kat's presentation was the kind of decline in risotto is really consistent with the decline in fine dining, but it is still a really versatile menu item as well as very profitable. So on fine dining menus, average price for risotto is $28. And on mid-scale and casual, it's about 22. So it commands a pretty good price. But the food cost is pretty low. It's rice and a lot of ingredients that you have on hand. So you can still make a really profitable menu item that is super customizable. And because this item isn't flavored in any way, it can be changed up every week. So you can make a weekly special or a seasonal thing, or you can just use it to make Arancinis or a number of other things. So these guys are good. I'm going to just add the rice from the pouch directly to my pot and some stock. So I mix like stock and a little bit of wine, and I'm going to let that simmer. So one thing that I don't know, about 28% of the US is users of ready rice, so the kind of microwavable pouches that you see at the grocery store. And to be clear, this is not that. It's not designed to go in the microwave. It's not heat and heat. It's not flavored or anything like that. This is specific to food service. And it is designed to be cooked like this, kind of on the stove top. And what's the other thing that I want to say about that? Oh, shelf stable. So fully cooked in the pouch, like in a giant pressure cooker oven. So the way that it is shelf stable, without having to add any preservatives to it, is that they fill the rice in the pouch. And then put it in giant pressure cookers with report ovens. And so when it comes out, the pouch is sealed and it is shelf stable until it's open. There is a 15-month shelf life on each pouch from the time that it's produced. So by the time you get it, I guess we probably about 12 months or so. So you can keep it on hand in your pantry for whenever you want. And this guy is basically done. So I'm going to just finish it with some Parmesan cheese and peas. Stir those in. I already took the heat off of it. And got a plate. So although the rice is already pre-cooked, you don't lose out on quality. It's the same sort of risotto rice texture. I know that there's a number of risotto rice that can be used. This is arborio, which is a good choice for this product because not only is it familiar and it does a great job making risotto, but it also has pretty good supply availability, which is of course an important factor in today's environment for sure. So that's like that. And I sauteed a little bit of my mushrooms in advance so I can top my risotto with them like that. And I'll probably finish this guy with a little parsley and a little Parmigiano Reggiano right over the top. So
that was great, Janet. So Janet, like
total time. Anything, yeah. Total time is about 5 minutes. So 2 minutes to sweat, 2 minutes to simmer with the stock and wine or whatever flavored liquid that you want to do. And then like finishing with your whatever the ingredients you want to finish. So this is, I think, a nice spring sort of a meal because it's got like the spring mushrooms. I'm living in Northwest Indiana and like everybody's crazy with the mushroom foraging right now. It's making me super jealous because I haven't had time to do it. So between the peas and the mushroom mix and the lamb, it's super still sort of savory since we're having a really crappy spring and it's still wet and cold here. This is both kind of spring as well as comforting and warming. So risotto in 5 minutes. Next up, I'm going to show you how to make that into arancinis really quickly. So all you have to do is take your base risotto. So in this case, instead of adding mushroom at the beginning, I'm adding some shredded short rib at the end. And I'm just going to take a scooper. So 1 pouch and like adding the cheese and the stock and the short rib. I'm going to get 10 arancini balls out of this. I see the oil on my hands. All stuck. Do my 3-step spreading process. I made the risotto earlier, just like you saw me do right here. But then I added the short rib. I put it in the refrigerator to chill it down. And then I put cheese and tomato in, which I don't see right here in front of me. So this one's not going to have that. But I did make some already that have them in it. So I put like a half of a grape tomato and a little chunk of mozzarella cheese in there. And did do my 3-step breading, flour, egg, and breadcrumbs. And in my breadcrumbs, I put za'atar because I think it's the flavor that goes really well with the kind of like cheeses and that kind of savory short rib flavor with, it's like a little bit sort of, what's the word? Trendy flavor, I guess is the word. But it's also approachable because it's mostly stuff that people have tasted before in the US and they're pretty familiar with it. So I already made some before. So I'm going to just drop 2 of these guys that already have cheese and the tomato in them down. And these guys can be made in advance. So you can see actually when you fill them, how big these guys are. And there's 10 of these for a pouch when you do it. So you can make them smaller and make more, or bigger and make less, of course. And I cook them for about 4 or 5 minutes at 350. And while those guys are frying, I'm going to make a dessert recipe. And because we're Mars, I'm going to make it with Dove, because who doesn't love Dove dark chocolate? So I'm going to make the fastest dessert risotto ever. And it is like a grown-up indulgent rice pudding. It hits that kind of sweet spot of like homey and comforting, but also indulgent because it's dark chocolate. So I'm taking just a little over an ounce of chocolate, 1 pouch of the rice, and putting it into my pot with, I'm using coconut milk. Now you can use just like half and half or cream or whatever sort of thing you want to. But when I'm using this much chocolate, I'm not even adding any sugar. You can add more sugar if you want to. My favorite way to actually make the dessert risotto is to make a pumpkin risotto, like a pumpkin spice in the fall is amazing. Also, coconut one is amazing. We did dessert arancinis recently at the ICCA event, and those were like a cookies and cream, chopped Twix inside with the risotto, and then it had like a pineapple coconut sauce that went with it. So, and because I like it to be not quite just plain, I'm going to make this more like a Mexican hot chocolate flavor. So I'm going to add just a couple of pinches of cinnamon to it and some chili. And because this is what I have around and I really like it. This is Aleppo pepper, which is totally the wrong region of the world for Mexican hot chocolate. But who doesn't love Aleppo pepper? So I'm just going to mix that in with my grains and the milk and just let it simmer for just a couple of minutes before it's all nice and creamy. So one thing you'll notice about it, because it's cooked and then cooled back down, just like pretty much any rice, if you cool it back down after you've cooked it, it gets a little bit stiff until it gets warm. So when you open up the pouch to cook with it, give it a massage. Massage your rice like it's in spa day. And then you pour it in so that the grains are all nice and broken up. If there's any other little clumps in there, you just kind of smash them down as they start to soften up.
So Janet, the dessert arancini sounds really interesting. So what do you make, like little balls of it? Then you have a sauce on the side? Is that what you're doing? That kind of.
Yep, it's like a little dipping sauce. You can also do like a trio dessert of them and have like different flavored arancini balls and different flavored sauces. Or you can do different like of the risottos and like little shooter glasses. That's a nice way to do like a flavor sampler for the dessert. Just a little bit of time. And I think it's about done. So I don't know about you guys, but these Dove promises, my promise is always next time I won't eat the whole bag once I open it because they're so good. And it just seems like so approachable when you open them because they're just so little. I've seen in a second. So one pouch made just like this makes about 2 like individual size portions, or it could be a share size. So there. Or a cute little orange, like we say. Hot. They are telling me that they're done. But they can sit there for a second longer. I show you how cute this presentation is with the little risotto, Mexican hot chocolate risotto. Got a couple of promises on there with a little cinnamon stick garnish. You can top it with a little cream. Grate some chocolate fresh over the top or cinnamon. I'm gonna press the spring thing to the ground. And this is like a coconut whip to go with my coconut milk that's in there. So it's like super yummy. Nice, warm. You can also make this cool if you wanted to serve it while it's either room temperature or while it's chilled. So you would add more liquid to make sure that it doesn't stiffen up too much. Of course, it's going to stiffen up when it's cool.
I love the chili spice in that. That really sounds interesting.
Yeah, and then to go with my arancinis, so the short rib arancinis. With cheese and my za'atar topping. I made a little Calabrian chili dipping sauce by just chopping up some red roasted peppers with some Calabrian chilies, a little lemon juice and lemon zest, and then topped it with a little bit more like Calabrian chili olive oil. So it makes a nice little dipping sauce, something a little bit different and brighter than marinara because these are pretty rich and really yummy, but that sauce is nice and bright, and I'm going to show you how beautiful these guys are inside. So I think we saw a short rib, actually, on a very short rib on that list, also kind of like trending ingredients. So there's the short rib in there, and there's a little tomato, and there's a cheese bite, and there's also cheese mixed in with the risotto. So they're beautiful and warm and savory and yummy. I think the other thing that is like really cool about this product is it's a lot of the kind of ingredients that you have on hand already. So you got butter and you've got aromatics. And all you got to do is like stir in some stock, wine, and it's super customizable. The product itself is vegetarian friendly. It's a vegetarian formula. It's gluten friendly. Doesn't have a gluten-free claim on it, but it's obviously gluten-free. It's just rice, oil, and water. Fully shelf stable for a year. So you can keep this on hand. It's great. One pouch is one serving. Or you could make multiple servings at a time, obviously, if you had multiple orders come in at one time. But it's a great thing to just pull out for versatility. You're never going to like have food waste with this because it's going to just stay there until you're ready to use it. You're never going to throw it away. It's also a good thing to have on hand for when you do run out of something. So maybe you did like normally have risotto on your menu, but from time to time you run out and then you have to cut the menu. So if you had this on hand, then you could continue to serve risotto as another use for this product. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the demo. And also we will be at the GCIA NRA reception at the hotel at the Peninsula. So we'll be doing a live tasting station there. So if you come by there, you guys can taste it for yourself.
Great, Janet. Thanks so much. And then I know Mary's going to join us now too, and others. But also, I think Mary had mentioned in the past or earlier too that if anybody who's with us today wants some samples of it, you guys will send some to them so they can play
Yeah,
around.
we'll be happy to send some out. And I just want to say one thing is most of the main distribution has picked up this item, so it will be a stocked item. But I recommend trying it. It performs great, as Janet has showed, and we would love to get some samples out your way. So just shoot us a note if you're interested.
Awesome. And Tamra, I think you're with us, right? I want to talk to you for a minute. Tamra, we tried to work with you last time, and I know you were in the middle of a photo shoot and had to run off. So yeah, talk to us about what's going on in your world. I don't want to even try to mention what you're doing today because I'm so excited about it, but I want you to tell us.
So what I'm doing is I'm working for a company, a startup company. We don't have a restaurant open. We have one being built right now. I'm in Los Angeles, and we have 5 locations under contract right now. And basically it's a QSR, and it is all 100% plant-based, no artificial flavorings, colorings, or preservatives. It's called Hart House. I trust you all know how to use Google, so you can Google it because I'm I can't tell you much more than that about it. But it's like In-N-Out and Chick-fil-A had a baby, and it was plant-based. That's the menu. So we have plant-based burgers, similar to like an In-N-Out with American cheese, which is all 100% plant-based. The dressings plant-based, and we have the chicken. So we have chicken tenders, and we have chicken sandwiches. 3 different kinds of chicken sandwiches. One has a kale slaw on it. It has a blood orange vinaigrette. The other one is a take on a Nashville hot, and it's called Hart Hot. And we have 6 different sauces that we have. It's been very difficult to find stuff that has no artificial colorings, flavorings, or preservatives in the plant-based world. It's been difficult to find a pickle without sodium benzoate. You wouldn't believe it, but it's difficult. So, and we have fries, tater tots, and then we have milkshakes, 4 different flavors of milkshakes made with the Oatly product. It's a Oatly mix that we're putting into a shake machine, and then, blending in some flavors. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. And the plant-based world out here in Los Angeles is going bonkers. So, and we're also, our mission is to get to lower waste. So not zero waste, because I can't think that we can get to zero waste, but our mission is also to have lower waste out of our restaurants. A lot of the reclaimed wood, reclaimed things are being used inside. 100% recyclable products as far as all of our takeout. We're trying to be sustainable as possible. And it's just, it's a great opportunity. I'm doing director of operations, purchasing, training. I just hired an HR person, so I don't have to do that anymore, because we would all know that I would be bad at that. I'm usually being reported to HR. So yeah, so that's kind of what's going on.
That's awesome. When's the first one projected to open?
The end of July will be the first one. We're actually this Saturday, they're having a launch party to launch. We're being launched at a Netflix party on this Saturday. So
that's cool.
You'll see it. TMZ will be reporting maybe.
There's no hint there about if you need to look this up, guys, it's Hart House, HART. So anyway, Tamra, that's great for you. It's really cool, isn't it? To like launch into something new like this? And I know a lot of our members have been down this road before, but it's exciting, isn't it, to be in a creative environment?
Yeah, it's super exciting. And our team is amazing. We have a great team. Our director of culinary is actually former Burger King. So he's doing great. I'm not in a culinary role this time, but I'm supporting culinary, which, to be honest, like my creativity was sucked out during COVID. And so I just need a break from all of that, and operations and training and procurement's like I'm hoping gonna re-energize me.
Very cool. Hey, Kat and Janet, I hope you're still with me. I've got a question for you, Kat, if you're still there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the adult beverage thing was really kind of surprising and not surprising. I understood what you said about, it's not to go during that time and all that. But, is there a big drop in that, do you think, or is there anything you've seen in research that due to supply? Because I hear from a lot of restaurant concepts that certain products they can't get anymore. Is it something does that play a role?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a game when it comes to alcohol and like getting specific types of brands. But I would also say like the lack of glass is also an issue, and bottling. And just like menu offerings overall, it's just very difficult to get it to go in certain states. And as we move back into restaurants, I think that we're going to see that lift go back to where it was before pre-pandemic.
Awesome. Janet, if you're still with us, I've got a question for you as well.
I am.
Yeah, and Mary could chime in too, but I know that we talked about risotto and arancini for for this product, but there's other, I mean, obviously dessert as well, but there's other uses because it's just a rice, right? So you could do this in any kind of a, whatever. You could, make any kind of a casserole, or you can make some kind of a, even a Cajun dish or whatever with it, right?
Or a congee with it. You can do like a rice porridge with it. You can make it into like a fusiony sort of rice bowl. You can make it into a breakfast porridge, even an allergen-free breakfast porridge. It's a great option.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to it. I know we're going to have some of this at our event in Chicago for our reception, which is probably a good segue for me to talk about it. Hopefully all of you are coming to our reception in Chicago. It's going to be on the 21st of May at the Peninsula Hotel, again, from 3 to 6. Kat, you're invited to. Please come and join us.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, we're going to have that. And then, of course, the ICCA Summit is in Washington, D.C. It's in June. It's the end of June. So all the information's on the website for that. And then we have in October, the GCIA Culinary Combine. It's going to be in San Diego. And we have a couple of other fall events coming up. One of the ones some of you have heard already, or maybe got the rumbling of it, but we were doing some research to find out where we're going to go for the GCIA fall event. We were going to do it in Ohio, in Cleveland, and due to some of the restaurants that just haven't reopened, we decided that wasn't the best. So we are in between, and we're looking at contracts right now for Denver or in Tampa, St. Petersburg. And we'll make that announcement next week. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for being on today. We're going to have a video that Mike's going to show in a minute. But thank you, everyone, for being with us today, both members and sponsors. And we look forward to seeing you next month. It's June 7th. So it's the first Tuesday of every month. We'll be doing this again. And again, we'll see everybody in a couple of weeks in Chicago.
Thanks Kevin, everyone. And Kat.